Hello. So, I've been reading some philosophy and some spiritual, psychological texts recently, but nothing has moved me or felt quite as personally relevant as the movie Lost in Translation. So, I wanted to talk a little about that and also some philosophical stuff. So, the movie Lost in Translation is interesting to me because there's a character who I relate with. Her name is Charlotte, and she happened to have studied philosophy at college. She just graduated. I'm about to graduate, and she has all these opportunities ahead of her. She has the ability to write. She's a good writer, and she seems to be in a good socioeconomic place. Um, and she's married to this guy who seems cool, I guess, or maybe not. Uh, Depends. And yet she has no clue what she's going to do. She feels stuck in her life, she says. And then we meet Bob Harris, who's an actor who was a star in these hit action films and lives a pretty full, exciting, uh, fast paced life up until the point we find him. And so essentially, what the writers of this movie have done is they've created a what I see as a yin and yang situation. So you have uh, Charlotte, who's in the sunrise phase of her life, while you have Bob Harris, who's in the sunset part of his life. So Charlotte is just coming into her own, and she's seeing all these opportunities that she could choose. She's realizing the existential nature of life, and that it's what you make it, but you have to make a decision in order to make it anything. And it's just a little bit overwhelming for her, uh, it seems. So she's struggling with starting life, while Bob Harris is struggling with ending life and wrapping things up and living a more slow and steady lifestyle. And I think it's really interesting because, um, sure, if you had a life like Bob Harris's, you would just dive right into that. But when there's so many options, so many different religions and a- approaches to spirituality and philosophies, you can sometimes feel uncertain about how to approach them, about which one to choose. So I think Charlotte just, well, wanted to have some confidence in herself and her decisions. Um, she wanted to be able to move forward and make some sort of a meaningful life. Something I think that Charlotte did a lot of was um, judging things. She seems to judge other people and place a value on certain things in a way that's not what I believe certain philosophers would say is wise. So I'll now read an essay that I am giving a little excerpt of. Society has habituated us to receive everything somewhere on the spectrum of blessing or curse, positive or negative, good or evil, masculine or feminine, when the truth is these conventions do not exist in nature. Sure, we have a naturally fearful reaction to a spider suddenly on our hand somehow, and breaking a leg is something that is dreaded by us. But wouldn't it be more accurate to say that these things are just things that happen? These things are necessary to someone at least. Doesn't that in itself make these things not bad? It follows necessarily from our environment that we have spiders appear in places other than the forest and that bones don't remain perfectly intact. These things are unfortunate and will naturally evoke negative emotions, but to get upset at the universe or God at these things is hardly appropriate. Stoic philosophy maintains that the only evil is moral evil. Pyrrho, the founder of Pyrrhonism, which is a school of philosophy which advocated withholding judgment on all things or being indifferent to them, which thus mirrored religions like Buddhism, he would do housekeeping tasks. So he'd clean his house at a time when doing so was labeled as a feminine task. He recognized that this is only seen as feminine because someone long ago decided that it was feminine and that people have just accepted it since then. So Pyrrho acted as an original and truly free person by reframing duties. Stoics were able to maintain peace of mind during tumultuous times through similar practices. Often we attach our feelings to things unnecessarily. We must basically be mindful of what is having a pull on us and respond in a way that is more according to what logic would prescribe. For example, getting upset about the shifts in your car. So I drive a manual car, and oftentimes I'll get upset because shifting from first to second gear is sloppy, and it's simply not wise to do this. I am tying my happiness to some external thing. I'm happy on the condition that a shift is smooth and that it doesn't feel bad on the transmission. But this is unreasonable because at the end of the day, I'm controlling some heavy machinery. I am sometimes good at it, and sometimes I'm less than perfect. But there's not much I can do about that. So when you frame it like that, you can better live with this and stop stressing about perfect shifts in your car. At this point, you might be thinking, this does not sound very spiritual. This sounds like dealing with the problems of the material world. To which I reply, the point is to deal with the problems of the material world so that you can focus on your inner self. Furthermore, framing your life as someone who is constantly dying, or as someone who exists as a mere collection of atoms in comparison to celestial bodies, can be useful. So it is basically this attitude of objectifying what you are doing, placing it in the grander scheme of things. An Epicurean method of reframing is sorting your problems into the necessary and the not necessary. We really don't need that much to be happy. A quote from Epicurus that I like is, "A simple meal of bread and water can bring as much joy as a feast if we have the right attitude." So I think Charlotte was perhaps tying her happiness to having some successful career. She was tying her peace to that, but in reality, these things are up to chance. They're up to fortune, as the Stoics would say, and they're largely out of our control. And instead of being peaceful on the condition that we have a nice career and perfect relationship, we ought to find peace within ourselves. So this is the takeaway that I have from the movie for myself. And the last scene in the movie is Bob Harris, who's played by Bill Murray. He runs up to Charlotte as he's leaving to go back to America, and he holds her and he whispers something in her ear, but the viewer doesn't get to hear what this is. And earlier in the movie, he remarked that Charlotte's, quote, "not hopeless." So one can only assume that he tells her something along the lines of trust the process and you're good. Be okay with that in itself. Stop striving for that job. Stop striving for your relationship to be perfect. Stop striving for the perfect philosophy, because it might not be out there. It might not be attainable. And your suffering is because of that. Not that Charlotte's suffering a whole lot, or in that much distress, but nevertheless. All right. Well, thank you.